Ladies and gentlemen, today we witnessed a moment that will echo through the halls of Congress and beyond. A moment where composure triumphed over chaos, intellect silenced interruption, and truth spoke louder than arrogance. The encounter between Senator Josh Hawley and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett wasn't just another political clash. It was a masterclass in poise under pressure, in defending principle amidst provocation. When the Senate hearing began, it was clear that the atmosphere was charged. The issue at hand was serious, the stakes were high, and the cameras were rolling. Among the voices that filled the room, Senator Josh Hawley's was predictably forceful. Sharp, deliberate, and at times cutting. He has built a reputation on being confrontational, a figure who thrives on debate and disruption. But what he didn't anticipate that day was coming face to face with someone who wouldn't flinch under pressure. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Her calmness didn't just balance the chaos, it commanded it. From the moment Hawley interrupted Crockett the first time, his intent seemed transparent. He wasn't just asking questions, he was trying to control the tempo. He cut across her words, pressing her mid-sentence, hoping to destabilize her rhythm. Many in the room, and certainly those watching at home, had seen this tactic before. It's the classic move of political theater, using interruption to dominate, to force the other speaker into a reactive position. But Crockett, with remarkable discipline, didn't take the bait. She didn't rush to defend herself, didn't raise her voice, didn't retaliate in kind. Instead, she paused, allowing silence to reclaim the space Hawley was trying to fill with noise. That silence was her weapon. It was unnerving to watch how a simple pause could disarm aggression. Each time Hawley interjected, Crockett's composure seemed to grow stronger. Her body language stayed open, her tone measured, her eyes locked onto him, not in confrontation, but in control. She represented a different kind of power. The kind that doesn't need to shout to be heard. And that composure became contagious. Even those on the committee, who had initially leaned toward Hawley's side, began to shift in their seats, sensing the imbalance. The contrast between Hawley's agitation and Crockett's calm was striking. By the third interruption, viewers could almost sense the turning point. Hawley was repeating himself, trying harder to unsettle her, but Crockett's steadiness began to turn his aggression into something else. Frustration. Each time he spoke over her, she would politely wait, then resume exactly where she left off, as though his words had never existed. It was subtle, but it was powerful. She was reclaiming her narrative each time he tried to take it away. That is the essence of composure, refusing to surrender your story to someone else's interruption. What made this exchange so compelling was how Crockett's calmness became a mirror for Hawley's agitation. It revealed more about him than it did about her. Each interruption highlighted his impatience, while her poise underscored her professionalism. It wasn't just a battle of ideas anymore. It was a visual representation of self-control versus impulsiveness. And the more he interrupted, the more apparent that contrast became. The hearing room, usually buzzing with chatter, began to quiet down as everyone recognized the shift. It takes extraordinary discipline to remain unshaken when someone tries repeatedly to provoke you. Crockett's background as a lawyer and legislator clearly showed in those moments. She understood that control isn't maintained through volume. It's maintained through presence. The most effective speakers in history have understood this. From courtroom debates to civil rights movements, composure has always been the most underestimated form of strength. Crockett's handling of Hawley became an embodiment of that timeless lesson. When your opponent loses their temper, you've already won the argument. What's also remarkable is how Crockett's demeanor spoke to something larger than the room itself. She represented the countless voices, especially women in politics, who have had to fight to be heard without raising their tone. Every pause she took, every breath between interruptions, carried the weight of years of dismissal and disrespect faced by women who dared to speak with authority. Her calmness wasn't just personal, it was generational. It was the evolution of strength in a political landscape that too often rewards aggression over articulation. As the interruptions piled up, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, something became clear. Hawley was no longer leading the exchange. He was reacting. Each time he cut her off, She re-established the rhythm. Each pause was a reminder that the person in control of the conversation isn't the one who talks the most. It's the one who decides when the conversation continues. Crockett's poise turned the hearing from a confrontation into a demonstration. She showed that dignity can't be interrupted, and respect, when claimed firmly, becomes its own defense. Even the audience watching online felt it. Social media exploded with commentary about the moment. Not because Crockett raised her voice or made a dramatic gesture, but because she didn't. Viewers praised her restraint, her clarity, her unwillingness to let frustration dictate her tone. In a culture where outrage often dominates headlines, her composure stood out like a steady flame in a storm. She reminded people that power doesn't always need to roar. It can whisper and still command attention. When history looks back on this exchange, it won't be remembered for Hawley's interruptions. It will be remembered for Crockett's refusal to be rattled. Her poise transformed what could have been a messy verbal sparring match into a moment of profound grace and strength. By staying calm, she didn't just preserve her integrity, she exposed the fragility of his. That is the art of composure, turning someone else's chaos into your calm. In the end, composure isn't just about self-control, it's about message control. Jasmine Crockett didn't let Josh Hawley dictate the tone, the pace, or the outcome of that exchange. She proved that chaos only wins if you allow it to. And on that day, composure not only held the line, it conquered it. Words, when chosen with precision and delivered with conviction, have the power to reshape an entire moment. In the case of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and Senator Josh Hawley, one single sentence did exactly that. After enduring 6 relentless interruptions, each more dismissive than the last, Crockett waited for the perfect moment, not to retaliate, but to reclaim control. And when she finally spoke, her line cut through the noise like a blade through fogs. "Senator, interruptions can't erase accountability." That one line did what 1,000 counterarguments could not. It stopped him cold. It silenced not only Hawley, but the entire room, transforming what had been a spectacle of tension into a moment of truth. The beauty of Crockett's response wasn't just in its words, but in its timing. She could have fired back earlier, meeting Hawley's aggression with equal force. But she didn't. She waited, methodically, patiently, allowing the tension to build, allowing each of his interruptions to reveal more about his impatience and insecurity. Then, at the precise moment when the weight of his own behavior became undeniable, she delivered a single, unshakable truth. The effect was immediate. The room that had once buzzed with murmurs and interruptions fell silent. In that silence, her authority filled the space. The power of that one line came from its dual purpose. It wasn't only a defense, it was a reflection. In calling out the act of interruption, Crockett didn't just confront Hawley's behavior, she held up a mirror to it. "Interruptions can't erase accountability" wasn't merely a rebuke. It was a declaration that no matter how many times someone tries to derail a truth, it still stands. It reminded everyone present that power does not come from who controls the microphone, but from who controls the meaning of the moment. Crockett transformed an attempt to silence her into an opportunity to remind the nation of the very principle the hearing was supposed to uphold: accountability. The artistry of this moment lay in how that sentence carried layers of interpretation. On the surface, it addressed Hawley's interruptions directly, a factual, composed statement that exposed his tactics. But beneath that, it carried a deeper resonance, one that extended beyond the walls of the Senate. It spoke to a wider pattern of discourse in politics and society, where shouting often replaces listening, and where truth is buried under theatrics. Crockett's words reached beyond the senator. They spoke to everyone who had ever been talked over, dismissed, or undermined simply for daring to speak their truth. It's rare for a single line to capture a shift in power so completely. But Crockett's did. In that instant, the balance changed. Hawley's confidence faltered. His body language betrayed a flicker of self-awareness, an unspoken realization that his attempts to dominate had backfired. What he intended as control turned into exposure. What he meant as authority turned into evidence of avoidance. Her calm, surgical reply transformed his aggression into self-inflicted defeat. Observers described the silence that followed as almost cinematic. The kind of pause where the air feels heavy, where everyone knows they've just witnessed something significant. It wasn't dramatic because she shouted or slammed her fist. It was powerful because she didn't need to. Her composure gave weight to every syllable. In that moment, Crockett embodied a truth that transcended politics. True strength isn't measured by how loud one speaks, but by how deeply one's words resonate. That single sentence also revealed the depth of Crockett's rhetorical skill. She didn't just aim to shut Hawley down, she aimed to remind the audience, both in the room and across the nation, why accountability matters. Her words cut through the partisan noise and centered the discussion on integrity. By saying, "Interruptions can't erase accountability," she reasserted the fundamental expectation of public office, that those who hold power must answer for their actions, no matter how much they try to deflect. It was a brilliant maneuver. She brought the conversation back to principle while simultaneously dismantling the tactic used against her. In an era where political discourse often feels like a shouting match, that moment stood out as a masterclass in restraint and impact. Crockett demonstrated what communication experts often describe as the economy of language, the ability to say more with less. Instead of engaging in a long-winded rebuttal, she distilled her message into a line that could be remembered, repeated, and quoted. It's the same kind of rhetorical mastery that defines historic oratory moments. The kind that moves from the chamber floor to the headlines within hours. The kind that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. Her statement also resonated because it touched on something deeply human, the frustration of being interrupted. Everyone has experienced it, being cut off, overlooked, or dismissed while trying to make a point. But few have responded with the grace and intelligence that Crockett displayed. In that way, her response wasn't just political. It was personal, relatable, and empowering. People watching from home didn't just see a politician holding her ground, they saw themselves reflected in her composure. By the end of that exchange, it was clear that Hawley's interruptions had achieved the opposite of their intent. Instead of undermining Crockett, they amplified her. Instead of silencing her, they made her words echo louder. And that is the irony of power misused. It often collapses under the weight of its own overreach. Crockett's single line exposed that truth with elegance and force. What makes that sentence unforgettable isn't just its phrasing, but its aftermath. It became a moment of reckoning, a shift in the hearing's tone, and a viral reminder that truth, when spoken clearly, needs no repetition. The line became symbolic, a rallying cry for those who believe in accountability, civility, and grace under fire. It reminded America that words, when chosen with purpose, can still pierce through the noise of division. So when Jasmine Crockett said, "Interruptions can't erase accountability," she wasn't just responding to Josh Hawley. She was redefining the moment. She proved that sometimes, one line is all it takes to end a battle and win the war of ideas. Her voice didn't just silence the room. It restored the meaning of public service. To speak truth, stand firm, and remind those who forget that accountability is not optional. It's inevitable. Leadership reveals itself most clearly under pressure. It is easy to lead when the room is quiet and everyone agrees. It is far more difficult when chaos erupts, when tempers rise, and when every word is met with resistance. During the tense exchange between Senator Josh Hawley and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, leadership didn't emerge through volume, titles, or authority. It emerged through discipline, composure, and courage. Crockett's handling of that moment wasn't just an example of personal strength. It was a lesson in what modern leadership looks like when integrity is tested in real time. From the very beginning of the confrontation, Hawley's strategy was clear: control the narrative, dominate the time, and push Crockett off balance. He interrupted her repeatedly, questioned her motives, and attempted to steer the conversation away from substance and toward spectacle. Yet Crockett refused to play his game. She understood something fundamental about leadership, that reaction is not the same as response. Reaction is emotional and impulsive, response is thoughtful and strategic. Crockett's ability to choose response over reaction transformed the entire encounter from an argument into a demonstration of control. At the heart of great leadership lies emotional intelligence, the capacity to understand, manage, and rise above emotion in moments of stress. Crockett embodied this perfectly. Every time she was interrupted, she didn't simply defend herself, she recalibrated the tone of the hearing. Instead of matching Hawley's intensity, she diffused it. Instead of escalating tension, she absorbed it. Her restraint wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. She showed that true leadership isn't about overpowering others, but about guiding the moment back toward meaning. That ability to maintain focus when others lose theirs is what separates those who hold authority from those who deserve it. Leadership also demands authenticity, and Crockett displayed that with clarity. She didn't shift her language to please anyone, nor did she adopt a performative persona to gain applause. Her words were consistent with her values, her demeanor aligned with her message. People followed her not because she shouted the loudest, but because they could feel the sincerity behind every word she spoke. Authenticity is magnetic in a world of facades, and Crockett's genuineness reminded both her supporters and critics that real leadership begins with truth. Another element of leadership that Crockett demonstrated is what scholars call composure under scrutiny. In politics, scrutiny is constant, every gesture is recorded, every pause analyzed, every expression magnified. Under that kind of lens, many crumble or overcompensate. But Crockett turned scrutiny into strength. She allowed people to see her patience, to see her humanity, and in doing so, she transformed vulnerability into visibility. Her calm demeanor under such direct challenge wasn't just admirable. It was instructive. It taught that leadership is about showing grace when grace feels impossible. Moreover, Crockett's response to Hawley was a masterclass in moral leadership. She didn't just aim to win a debate, she aimed to model a standard of conduct. Her message, spoken through tone as much as through words, was that public office comes with responsibility. When she said, "Interruptions can't erase accountability," she wasn't only defending herself, she was holding everyone in that room to a higher expectation of respect and duty. Leadership, at its best, sets an example that others can learn from. Crockett did that not by commanding obedience, but by earning admiration. The hearing also illuminated how leadership thrives on preparation. Crockett didn't stumble or stutter, even when repeatedly cut off. Her mastery of the topic gave her confidence that could not be shaken. This is an essential truth about leadership: confidence must be grounded in competence. She knew her facts, her arguments, and her principles, and that knowledge gave her the composure to withstand pressure. When you understand your purpose and your mission deeply, interruptions become mere noise. Crockett's command of detail reminded everyone watching that knowledge remains one of the purest sources of power. But leadership isn't only about intellect. It's about influence. The way Crockett handled herself reverberated beyond the chamber. Social media exploded with clips of her calm defiance, her unshakable tone, her one-line takedown. People across the political spectrum took notice, not because she won the argument in a traditional sense, but because she elevated it. In a time when political discourse is often reduced to sound bites and shouting, she brought back something rare: dignity. Her leadership reminded the public that strength and civility are not opposites. They can coexist, and when they do, they command respect far beyond partisan lines. The lesson she offered was simple yet profound: leadership is not about silencing others, but about standing firm without losing self-respect. She showed that power is most persuasive when it is principled. In that chamber, she didn't need a raised voice or a gavel to lead. She led by example, by embodying the very qualities that others claimed to represent but failed to show. Her behavior also reflected a leadership principle that transcends politics: control what you can, let go of what you can't. Crockett couldn't control Hawley's interruptions, but she could control her reaction. She couldn't dictate his tone, but she could define her own, and in choosing to remain calm, she reframed the entire dynamic. She taught that leadership is about where you place your energy, whether you feed conflict or channel it toward clarity. Her choice to remain grounded turned what could have been a spectacle of anger into a lesson in grace. As the exchange drew to its close, it became evident that leadership had changed hands. Not through force, but through influence. Crockett didn't win because she silenced Hawley. She won because she elevated the standard of discourse. Her calm authority revealed that leadership isn't measured by dominance, but by discipline. It's not about winning the argument. It's about defining the tone of it. In that hearing room, amid interruptions and tension, Jasmine Crockett offered more than a rebuttal. She offered a blueprint. She demonstrated that leadership is the art of standing tall without stepping on others, of commanding respect without demanding it, and of guiding even your opponents toward a higher level of conversation. That day, she reminded America, and perhaps even Hawley himself, that leadership isn't about control. It's about character. What Jasmine Crockett achieved in that tense exchange with Senator Josh Hawley transcended the moment. It was not merely a clash of two lawmakers. It was a cultural and generational shift captured in real time. Her composure, clarity, and conviction became a symbol of something far larger than political debate. In a chamber long dominated by raised voices and entrenched hierarchies, Crockett's calm defiance stood as a new symbol of power. One that doesn't shout to be heard but resonates because it cannot be ignored. She didn't just defend herself. She represented a movement toward a different kind of leadership, a different kind of justice, and a different kind of America. To understand the magnitude of that moment, we must see it beyond the political lens. Crockett's refusal to be rattled wasn't simply about maintaining her dignity. It was about reclaiming space. Space that has often been denied to women, especially women of color, in positions of power. For generations, politics has been shaped by voices that dominate through aggression and authority. Crockett, however, embodied a new energy, one that blends intelligence with restraint, passion with principle, and courage with civility. Her demeanor sent a message. The era of intimidation as power is fading, and the age of composure as strength is rising. What made her stance symbolic was how deeply it resonated with the public. Viewers who watched the clip online didn't just see a congresswoman handling an interruption. They saw a reflection of themselves. Every person who has been talked over, underestimated, or dismissed simply for asserting their voice. Crockett's reaction became a collective moment of empowerment. In that single instance, she reminded people that standing firm doesn't always require shouting back. Sometimes, silence and precision speak louder than outrage ever could. She turned restraint into rebellion and dignity into defiance. That is why her words didn't just silence a senator. They awakened a sentiment. Crockett's response represented a broader cultural evolution in how we perceive strength. For too long, strength in leadership has been equated with dominance, raising one's voice, commanding attention, overpowering opponents. But Crockett redefined it before our eyes. Her kind of strength didn't rely on volume or force. It was grounded in confidence, intellect, and presence. She showed that you can dismantle disrespect without descending into it, that you can correct without condemning, and that power can be calm, graceful, and still absolute. In that sense, she became not just a participant in the hearing, but a representative of a shifting American ideal, where empathy and intellect replace ego as the measures of authority. Moreover, Crockett's composure carried a distinctly historical resonance. It echoed the spirit of countless women who have had to fight for their right to speak without being silenced. From Shirley Chisholm to Barbara Jordan, the struggle for respect in male-dominated political spaces has always been about more than policy. It has been about presence. Crockett's moment was a continuation of that lineage. Her calm strength, her refusal to be belittled, and her ability to command attention without demanding it reminded the nation that progress doesn't come from conformity. It comes from courage. Each pause she took, each deliberate word she spoke, carried the weight of that legacy. She wasn't just responding to Hawley. She was representing every voice that had once been talked over and every woman who had ever been told to wait her turn. Her symbolic power also extended beyond gender or party. It reached into the core of civic culture, a reminder that politics need not be performative to be powerful. In an age of viral arguments and headline-grabbing theatrics, Crockett's grace stood out precisely because it was genuine. She didn't seek applause, she sought accountability. And in doing so, she made something rare happen. She restored a sense of seriousness to a public hearing. For one moment, the noise quieted, and substance took center stage again. That shift, small as it may seem, is the seed of meaningful change. It reminded people watching that politics is not entertainment, it's governance, and it demands maturity. In the broader social context, her handling of the exchange signaled a new era of representation. Jasmine Crockett, as a woman of color in Congress, carries the weight of visibility. Every move she makes is watched, every reaction scrutinized. Yet rather than bending under that pressure, she uses it as fuel to challenge the old norms. When she told Hawley, "Interruptions can't erase accountability," it wasn't only a personal rebuttal. It was a statement of principle that transcended identity politics. She showed that strength has no gender, that authority has no color, and that respect must be earned, not demanded. In that sense, she became a living symbol of progress, not just a voice in government, but a mirror of what democracy can look like when equality is practiced, not preached. Her composure also pointed to a generational transformation in American politics. The new generation of leaders entering public life, those who have grown up in the era of digital transparency and social accountability, are redefining what it means to serve. They are less concerned with appearances and more focused on authenticity. They are replacing performative outrage with purposeful dialogue. Crockett's conduct embodied that shift. She didn't just speak for herself, she spoke for a rising wave of leaders who believe that you can stand firm without being cruel. That persuasion is stronger than provocation, and that leadership, when rooted in empathy, can reshape even the most rigid institutions. As her exchange with Hawley spread across news outlets and social media platforms, it became more than a viral clip. It became a cultural statement. People weren't quoting Hawley's interruptions, they were quoting her calm. They weren't discussing his dominance, they were celebrating her dignity. That inversion of focus is how change begins. It starts when society stops glorifying aggression and starts admiring grace. It starts when audiences no longer cheer for chaos, but for clarity. Jasmine Crockett became that pivot point, the embodiment of a value shift America has long needed. By the end of the hearing, Crockett had done something extraordinary. She didn't just win a debate. She redefined the rules of engagement. She turned political conflict into a lesson on humanity, and turned interruption into a symbol of resilience. Her moment with Josh Hawley wasn't just a victory for herself. It was a victory for everyone who believes that civility and courage can coexist. Jasmine Crockett's composure wasn't just an act of personal strength. It was a statement of national transformation. She stood not only as a congresswoman defending her right to speak, but as a symbol for a future where strength is measured not by how much you can overpower, but by how deeply you can stand in your truth. In that moment, she didn't just represent change, she was the change. In the end, this wasn't just about Josh Hawley being silenced. It was about Jasmine Crockett being heard. Her grace under pressure transformed interruption into inspiration, and her final line reminded us all that power doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the one that stands unshaken in truth. History will remember not the interruptions, but the silence that followed her words. Because in that silence, Jasmine Crockett didn't just win the moment, she defined it.